Welcome.
Shannon, welcome. I was like,
And thank you so much.
Thank
you so much
you.
for being here with us. So again, I think we both already know you, but we'll just do our kind of introductions. Obviously, I'm Jonathan Cohn.
Zayda Ortiz, how are you?
And then we'll start off kind of with, just take maybe, let's say 2 minutes, as you're probably used to. Tell us who you are and why you're running.
Oh, sure thing. Well, thank you all so much. It's so great to be here. Really excited to get to talk to you today. My name is Shannon Liss-Riordan. I'm running for Attorney General. I'm running because I've spent my career taking on the biggest challenges and delivering big results for regular people. And I'm very excited about this race for Attorney General. So I feel like I've spent the last 20 plus years of my career working as a private Attorney General. And I think that there's so much more that we can do now with the power of the state. So for my entire legal career, more than 23 years, I've been a practicing lawyer. I've represented working people. I've made national headlines, leading teams of lawyers, taking on some of the largest corporations in America. And time and again, we've beaten the odds and we've won. I've been proud to take on corporations like Uber and Starbucks and FedEx and Amazon and my alma mater, Harvard University, that I have proudly sued at least 4 times. And I've represented all types of working people, waitresses, construction workers, janitors, firefighters, Uber drivers, strippers, and helped them recover hundreds of millions of dollars that corporate America stole from them. This work has changed industries across Massachusetts and throughout the country. And I'm very proud to have dedicated my career to fighting for the people, against the powerful, and winning. And that's exactly what I plan to do as your next Attorney General. So I'm very excited to answer your questions today. I really do see this race as a job interview. You are hiring a lawyer. You're hiring a lawyer to lead the people's law firm. I am the candidate in the race who has the experience of managing a law firm. I'm the only candidate in the race who has done that. I'm the only candidate who's an actual practicing lawyer. I've won the jury trials. I've won the appeals. I know how to use our laws to improve people's lives, make progress on some of the toughest issues facing us, fighting race discrimination, standing up for gender equality, protecting the dignity of work. I'm very proud to have the endorsements of about 40 labor unions representing, I believe, more than 100,000 working people across Massachusetts. And I'm excited about what we can do, taking these David and Goliath battles that I've been winning for years and expand it to so many areas that the Attorney General's office touches. So very excited to get started. And I hope you read our questionnaire. It was a great experience filling that out and thinking through all of these policies and thinking about the concrete things we can do with this Attorney General's office. So thank you so much, John. And let me hear your questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'll be starting off. And yes, thank you for taking the time to fill out the questionnaire. And I tell candidates all the time, while the Progressive Mass questionnaire is very complex and very detailed, it is going to prepare you for forums just like we're doing today, because John and the crack team at our endorsements and elections team really spends a lot of time working on that and crafting it to keep it up to date. So you're with Progressive Mass today. And so my very first question to you, Shannon, is what does progressive mean to you? And what do you see the biggest obstacles are to achieving progressive change in our Commonwealth?
Progressive means to me, basically what it says, making progress on the issues that are going to lead us forward as a society. I feel like I've seen the way the legal system works and the way our politics works. The status quo is the default. And I know that the default is what happens unless you've got people who are very committed to actually making things happen and making things change. And I have, I think through my whole career, shown that I'm not afraid to take on those big challenges. I'm not afraid to take on those vested interests. I think the biggest challenge we face is complacency, is when people don't feel optimistic or don't feel like they can have a role in their government or what is shaping our politics. So, I mean, going back to my very early days as an activist, I was a women's rights activist and organizer right out of college when I worked for the legendary Bella Abzug. I learned so much from watching how she just had an idea. She rallied people around her and made it happen. So I think that is the key, is that we need to have leaders who are not afraid to take action. And we need to be able to motivate people. Back then in my early 20s, I was getting young people of all races and backgrounds together, committed to actually doing something to make a difference in our society and our politics. And that's what we need to do. We need to bring hope. We need to rally people together. We need to have some clear goals, some real action items, and we need to move on them and make them happen.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Took a second too long to unmute myself. So there's a fundamental tension in the role of Attorney General. On the one hand, you're an independently elected official, and as you might describe yourself, kind of the people's attorney. And on the other hand, you're the attorney for state government. So how would you approach cases where you might actually disagree with the actions or positions of state government, and kind of give any examples about that, if you can?
Yeah, no, I'm really happy that you asked that question, because this is one of the main issues I've been talking about since the beginning of the race. As a civil rights lawyer for more than 20 years, I know that the state is not always on the right side of the issue. In fact, I've gone up against the state multiple times and I've won. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to have that role as Attorney General. And under my watch, the state is not going to be spending taxpayer money defending the wrong side of the issue. I would know what's going on in that office, what positions the office is taking, and I would make sure that our energy and our focus is in the interests of the people. So just to name some examples, just a couple weeks ago, we sued the state police for violating our newly implemented Massachusetts Paid Family Leave Act. And it's looking like it's not just limited to the state police. The Commonwealth in all of its agencies is violating this act. I'm taking that on. I'm taking that on as a private lawyer, and as AG, I would make sure that, it would be my role. I understand it's the constitutional role of the Attorney General to defend the state, but it would be my role in representing state agencies to try to keep them out of trouble and make sure these issues don't happen in the first place. And when there are issues, I would mediate. I would do everything I can to resolve the cases so that we're not spending taxpayer money. It's not like a corporate law firm where you knee-jerk defend your clients, whatever the issues are. It's a public interest law firm. We have to make sure we're taking the interests of the people. And in cases where we couldn't get it resolved, I would appoint a special attorney general to play the role of defense, and I would join the plaintiffs. Like another recent example is there's a case right now that's against the state involving our lead paint law. This is a law that was enacted back in the 1970s, and it has completely failed. It has not succeeded in de-leading our housing stock. Instead, what it has done is led to rampant discrimination against families with children under the age of 6 because landlords don't want to rent to them. What we need to do is instead of just defending this case, I think the AG's office needs to say, hey, there's a problem here. Let's get our law amended to make sure we're getting our whole housing stock de-leaded. This is not just a housing issue. It's a health issue. It's an equity issue. It's a discrimination issue. I've taken on the state for over years for using discriminatory civil service exams for the hiring and promotion of police officers and firefighters. Based on my work, I've gotten Black and brown firefighters and police officers hired across the Commonwealth. Time and again, the state has been defending these cases, even when we have proved multiple times in federal court that these exams are discriminatory. They violate federal discrimination law. And nowhere else in the country is still using these written pen and paper exams to pick police officers and firefighters. It just tests how well you do on an exam, not who's the bravest, strongest, most empathetic for these roles. So those are just a handful of examples, but I'm very excited to have the opportunity to actually make decisions on where our state priorities and resources should be spent.
Great. Oh, now I thought I was muted, but I'm not. I'm just pinned. Great. Thank you so much. John, I think the next question, she's kind of pretty thoroughly answered it.
Yeah,
I can
do the next one.
we can just jump to the next one, because the next question is like, why are you qualified for this job? And you are like, you're killing it. You're mind reading us today. I'm just gonna go I'm gonna go rogue, John. I'm gonna go completely rogue.
Go ahead.
And I just saw a question in the chat box that I kind of like. So, what specifically would you do to confront and change systemic racism in our state? I mean, it's something that's been at the forefront of a lot of people. Personally here in Malden, we've had a lot of racism in our charter school, and two young girls that I helped with, they were discriminated against because of the way they wear their hair. And Maura Healey did step up, and we got the policy changed after the AG brought pressure to it. And that is one way that, racial equity is, I saw that the AG's office could do with racial equity. So if you could give me some other examples of what you could do to help close that gap of inequity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as a workers' rights lawyer, as a civil rights lawyer for more than 20 years, not only have I collected wages that have been stolen from people, but I've taken on systemic racism. I know how to use the courts to do impact litigation to root out discrimination. And I think that there's more that can be done by the Attorney General's office directly on that issue. Right now, a lot of the anti-discrimination work in Massachusetts is largely left to the MCAD. I think that's an agency that needs a lot more help. And I think that there's a lot that can be done from the AG's office directly. So the work that I've been doing through my whole career is exactly the type of work that I'm excited to expand upon with the resources of the state behind it. And there's, I've forced companies to diversify. A company that had never hired a non-white employee. I have talked to you about the civil service discrimination class actions I've done. Currently, I've got a case against Uber for discriminating against drivers using its customer rating system. You know how you give a star rating at the end of your Uber or Lyft ride? A lot of people don't realize that unless those drivers get a really high, like 4.6, 4.7 average rating, they're fired. They lose their job. And yet these customer rating systems have a clear discriminatory impact. I surveyed my clients and found statistically significant evidence that Black and brown drivers are getting kicked off more often than white drivers because of these discriminatory rating systems. And it's not just Uber, it's not just tech companies. These types of new invidious types of discrimination are creeping into our society in so many places. So many companies are using these new ways of importing customer reaction. But employers can't just base terms and conditions of employment based on what the public says, because it's going to have a discriminatory impact. So I think that those are examples of new areas we need to be facing. In the work that I've done, it's not just in the workplace, in our schools too. I'm about to file a case actually against a Georgia school district where students were permitted to wear Confederate flags on campus. And then when other students wore Black Lives Matter shirts, they were told they weren't allowed to because that violated the dress code. And then when some Black students decided to organize a protest against it, they got suspended and were told they couldn't do it. But interestingly, only the Black students were suspended, not the white organizers. So anyway, I'm about to do, some civil rights lawyers in Georgia invited me to do this case with them, and we're about to launch that. And that's exactly the kind of issues that the AG's office can be taking a stand on through litigation and through the bully pulpit, that racism has no place in our society, and the AG's office has an extremely important role to play to make sure that that our anti-discrimination laws are aggressively enforced.
Thank you. And then, so on another topic. So Massachusetts as a coastal state will be disproportionately hit by the impacts of climate change. What role do you see for the office in strengthening our response to the climate crisis?
So I think as Attorney General, I'll have a lot of important responsibility for ensuring that the roadmap that our legislature is putting in place is actually enforced. I know from my practice, from my legal career, that just having good laws on the books are not enough. these laws are not self-enforcing. You need to have a strong attorney general who knows how to use the force of law, who knows how to use the power of the courts to make sure that corporations comply. So I would aggressively use our environmental division to enforce these rules, to enforce these laws. Massachusetts is one of the only states that actually has criminal authority with respect to environmental enforcement. And I would be sure to use that with bad actors who are just trying to get out of their responsibilities. And I also am very excited about this idea of setting up a green bank where we can use penalties collected from environmental enforcement to fund a range of environmental justice projects, clean energy projects, and other ways that we can help combat climate change. So as Attorney General, I would plan to be an activist working with the legislature. I think there's a lot more that the AG's office can do to work actively, proactively with the legislature to make sure that we're getting the right laws passed. But once those laws are passed, it's not enough. Our work isn't done. We need to have someone who knows how to enforce the laws. And that's what I've been doing for more than 20 years. So I think I'm the most qualified candidate in this race to take that on.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have some candidate specific questions, and my first question to you on that point is, you're one of the only candidates in the race who doesn't support completely eliminating qualified immunity for police officers. And qualified immunity has proven to be a significant roadblock towards holding officers who are law breaking accountable in the courts. Can you give me a little more background on that?
Yeah, no, I think the qualified immunity doctrine as it exists now is not working. And I think it needs to be seriously reformed. And I think the legislature needs to lead on this. I know this issue very well because I worked for 2 years as a federal law clerk right after law school before I became an employment lawyer. I drafted decisions related to qualified immunity. And I know that this doctrine has thwarted the rights of individuals to get justice when they have been subject to abuse by the police. So the problem with the qualified immunity, well, a problem with the qualified immunity doctrine is what it does is it shields police officers from liability unless there is some clear-cut rule or regulation or case law that is already previously established what they did to be wrong. And the problem is that there are just too many gaps. The law is too murky. So what I think needs to happen for the benefit of everyone is we need to have the rules more clearly spelled out. We need to have both laws and regulations that are enacted by our legislature, and also the decisions that come out of the courts need to be more clear, and there needs to be more of them so that police officers understand their responsibilities, so that we can be sure that training is effectively teaching them what crosses the line and what doesn't, and most importantly, so that citizens understand what their rights are. Because I absolutely agree that when people are subject to abuse and inappropriate behavior by police officers, there needs to be accountability, and these citizens need to get justice.
Great, thank you. And so kind of going to a macro question, how would you describe yourself? So if elected, how would you describe yourself as different from your predecessor in the office?
Well, I mean, I think Maura Healey's done a great job as Attorney General. I think there are a lot of areas where there is a more activist approach that would be possible that I would carry out. So, for example, in my prime area, where my background has been in wage enforcement and employee rights, I know that a lot of times it takes a while to go after these corporations and collect wages. I see it every day. My clients are hardworking people trying to put food on the table and pay their rent, and they need their wages now. So many people are living paycheck to paycheck, and they can't afford to wait months or even years before their errant employer gets hauled in to pay what they owed them for their wages. So one idea that I have is, if you're eligible for unemployment, you need your unemployment pay now. So we have a system where you go, you apply for unemployment, you collect your unemployment, and it's up to the state to go collect the premiums from employers to fund the system. I want to implement something similar for wage theft. If you come in and you show that you were not paid properly for your wages, I want to set up a fund so that workers can get paid right away. And then it'll be up to the state to go after those employers. And part of what the AG's office has traditionally done for wage enforcement has been issuing civil citations, which can work in some instances, but when you've got employers who really want to game the system and not pay their fair share, they know that they can take those procedural, they can drag down these procedural systems and take forever before ever getting anywhere. So I would go straight to court, and that's what I know how to do. That's what I've been doing for more than 20 years, leading teams of lawyers, going straight to court, seeking penalties, seeking triple damages, and we can use those funds to help fund this this worker fund that I'm talking about. I definitely advocate for increased funding for the Fair Labor Division from the legislature, but there are other sources of funding. The AG's office every year puts out a report on how much they've collected in unpaid wages over the past year. And not long ago, the office announced that over the last year, they collected $700,000 in unpaid wages. I mean, that's great, but to be honest, it's what I've done in my law firm, in a weekend. We collect millions of dollars every year in unpaid wages and get it back into the pockets of hardworking people. And I think this is critical. By the same token, I would take that same approach to consumer protection, to enforcing our environmental laws, to making sure that our healthcare system is adequate and available for high quality healthcare for everyone. So I think there's just a lot more concrete work that we can do to make sure that hardworking people are getting their due, and corporations are being held accountable who aren't doing their share.
Thank you so much. That is amazing, and we're at time. So our list.
Let's do the kind of rapid fire light questions.
The rapid fire. Okay, we'll do the quick fire. Yeah. Your favorite binge for COVID? What was your favorite binge watch for COVID?
Oh, what was my favorite binge watch? We watched Ozark. I really liked that. Okay. Ozark on top of my head answer.
Yeah. No, that's what we want.
Okay.
You're a policy queen, but let's see what you do on these.
And then, so what's their favorite spot in Massachusetts to go to when you need to recharge?
Favorite spot when I need to recharge? Well, I like hanging out in newly unionized coffee shops for one thing. How's that?
That's perfect. All
right.
And good closing, good answer. Very good answer. Cheers to the Starbucks folks. In closing, after you talk to a voter, how would you like them to describe you to other people they know?
Impassioned, committed, committed to justice and seeking justice on behalf of people whose voices need to be heard.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.